we are connected, the more the hate as well grows, uh, from what I've observed. So if you followed in a couple of weeks, you can tell that that hate from online is also spreading to offline spaces. We have seen how the online hate has moved to health, with, lots of foreign nationals being turned away from health facilities. This emanated from hate speech or online hate incident that were happening. And we know this because we've been following them, and then we have been dealing with them through reporting on Real 411 and other platforms that are available, of which is the Human Rights Commission of South Africa. So you can tell, and there's also a talk now. People are saying that, it needs to move to education. So we are anticipating that, in the next few months, of which leading to the next academic year, we will see that hate that is being spread on online communities moving to other social spaces, of which is education, and also affects children. So those are the issues that hate speech does. Those are the issues that hate speech does. Start from there, then polarize society, and society start hating, and then we start having us versus them type of situation. So as we're here today, I believe as a young people, we do have the power to deal with some of these issues, because we are connected as young people. There's no one who's connected like us young people, and we know how to navigate all these spaces of connectivity. So it's all up to us here just to start looking into these issues and educate each other on how we can combat this information, including hate speech, of which is very much critical. And there's always a connectivity between the two, disinformation and hate speech. I think some of this connectivity might be talked to during the training that our speaker is going to talk about. So moving forward, I'm going to call Kavisha to come and give us the presentation for today, and then give us the practical lesson on how we can combat hate speech. So yeah, Kavisha, please, welcome.
Thanks, Ntsako. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I hope that you've had a wonderful lunch. My name is Kavisha. I'm the Executive Director of the Campaign on Digital Ethics, or CODE. We're a non-profit organization that was launched in 2024, and we're trying to build a safer digital future. We know that technology will always be in our lives. We've opened this Pandora's box. So there's never going to be a time where we don't have access to social media and now AI. And the key in this is, how do we try and build these technologies, or advocate that these technologies are built with safety and rights in mind. So I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Motlatsi. Kamote, Motlatsi, wave your hand. There's Motlatsi over there. Motlatsi is our head of research and programs. And today's session is going to be really interactive. So does everybody have a paddle? Yeah? Anybody without one? Anyone needs a paddle? So we're going to be using this. They also double up as a fan. It's quite hot. And we hope that you're going to engage and participate as much as possible. So as Ntsako was talking, hate speech seems to be proliferating in the online world because of perhaps access to social media. People now have platforms to say what they feel. And sometimes what people feel and what they say can be considered hateful. But before we get into that, I just wanted to do a quick icebreaker with everyone. What are your feelings about the internet and not even the internet, what are your feelings about social media today? How does social media make you feel? No, well, you lifted up your hand. I mean, you have to say words now. You have to say words. You lifted up your hand. Put your mic on, Amir. There we go.
I mean, this is how I'm feeling generally, but yeah, not great. I think a lot of it is definitely curated, and I mean, and I don't fully understand how the algorithms always work, but I feel like it is designed in a way that is accelerating this right-wing nationalist agenda a lot more than we would like to. For example, I had to block Elon Musk just so I don't have to see his tweets.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be the first thing that I see anytime I would log in. So, yeah, not great. It's very well curated.
I blocked the man, but I still see his tweets, and that's the problem because he owns the platform. Anybody else want to tell us how they feel? Somebody on the side? Oh, we're going to get to you. 2 seconds. Where's Ntsako? Can we have a little bit of help with maybe getting from side to side? If you're not busy. Or if somebody else wants to volunteer. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
I do agree with the gentleman over there. I think also I was just putting it in the mid because social media has sort of put eyes on various communities that didn't have eyes on them. You know, I think one such has been the genocide in Gaza. I think people have known for years about it, but now we're actually seeing the truth. But it does get suppressed by the algorithm. I agree. I also had to block Elon Musk. I had to block a lot of, you know, even his followers just to stop seeing his tweets. At least now I see it like once a month as opposed to every day. And so things like that, even on other apps that are more liberal, like there's certain things that don't break through the algorithm because it is counteracting misinformation, as well as information with regards to sexual and reproductive health. We don't see that as much. Abortion access, contraceptive access, that does not break through, and if it does, it's the wrong information. So I'm midway because we're seeing what we need to see or what needs to be seen, but sometimes it doesn't always break through. You have to actively look for it. And so that's why I'm seeing the bad parts.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how algorithms work. I just want to ask another question because I think everybody has some feelings about social media. It can be positive in terms of accessing information that you wouldn't necessarily see on the news media, but it also can be quite negative depending how your algorithm is structured. I have a question it's going to require a little bit of honesty because I don't think any of us would like to think that we hate people, but are there groups of people or things or content that you love to hate? And I'm going to go with my list in no particular order. Trump, Elon, Netanyahu, Modi, the Kardashians. Those are my love to hate. And when I say love to hate, it's, you know, you're kind of looking for that content online that's trashing or taking them down because it makes you feel a particular type of way. It gives you a little bit of gratitude to see that these very powerful people are, you know, being memed or, you know, being mocked. So does anybody want to share content or people that they love to hate? Because I think this is part of the ecosystem of why we're seeing so much of hatefulness emerge online. You can't let me be the only one that shared. So somebody has to. Okay, and then we'll come to you afterwards.
Hi, the mic has been in my hand from the previous question. The previous question was about social media and how we all feel about it. First of all, I'd say that there's nothing wrong with social media. It's just that there are people on social media that misuse it, and that's why we are exposed to things that we do not want to see, like Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Your second question was things that we love to hate. Obviously, we're going to mention those two people again, and the Kardashians, people that portray a fake lifestyle, and people that just push false narratives. I'm going to talk about a particular journalist in South Africa. I don't know if he's a qualified journalist, but he's a proclaimed journalist, and that's Musa Kawula. I'm not going to hide the fact that I do not like him. He destroys people online, and people like him are people that push what we actually are fighting for here as journalists, and we're fighting for human rights. He invades people's privacy, and he says the most derogatory things about people that are in the public eye. So yeah, what I hate about social media is that it validates people that claim to be journalists. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Feels on. In terms of the people that I kind of can't help but hate, I definitely noticed that something my algorithm has clocked for me as a source spot is about this sort of state of political leadership in the world, the constant hypocrisy, and the lack of a sort of meaningful use of political capital to describe and acknowledge the problems we're facing. And I think on the US front, that links a lot to why I'm engaging less and less with social media outside of what I need to, because when you're vaguely involved in the media space, you get a sense of some kind of terms of engagement, some sort of imperfect but necessary and effective process of fact-checking, of curating. And the more I find that people use social media as a primary source of news and information, the more pessimistic I become about the capacity of political leaders, particularly those in the West, to regulate this problem and understand the legal deficits that need to be fixed by their legislature to win, and fueling the type of simplistic rhetoric that got their peers in power.
Completely. I'm going to take one more. There at the back.
Are we going to talk about the cat videos on Facebook? I think that's pretty much social media for me, essentially, that I think the AI, ability to create a very disturbing, dysfunctional, very, it's
Sorry,
like...
can you just explain the cat videos? Because
okay, for those who don't know.
Yeah, don't know.
People don't know the cat videos?
We do.
There's no way you don't know the cat videos.
Explain
You don't know.
Explain it to me.
Okay, the cat videos are basically AI cartoons of really disturbing content, gender violence. It's really disturbing, but it comes across as innocent because it's cartoonized, and the youth has access to this content. It's very much available to everyone. Everybody's going down that deep dark, cat. And you know how the algorithm works. You watch one, it brings 10 back onto your feed. So I think the lack of regulation in terms of how AI is, creating all of this content is quite disturbing to me. And then also, obviously, the misinformation, just off the previous speaker as well. I think we saw this during COVID, how the wildfire of misinformation can quickly go from a proper social media network to WhatsApp and become information that people are using in isolation to manage, a pandemic. I think is quite disturbing. And then also some of the rage baits that you end up in terms of TikTok, and how you can end up in doomscanner, not really getting information from real people or real journalists, but people's opinions that are very hateful. And so that's what I was.
So that's all really helpful. And I wanted to touch on something that you were saying around social media is not bad, people are bad. Right? We're going to counter that a little bit, because I think these platforms are designed to keep us hooked through rage and anger, but we'll talk about that later. Just, using the paddles again, do you think that the things that you're seeing online at this very moment is an actual reflection of society? Yes or no? I just want to get a gauge of the room. Okay. So I'm going to come to you, because you're saying that it is a reflection of society. I just want your thoughts.
at least of the part of the society, and you have to see the evolution of what happened at least in the last 10 years in our societies, not only in South Africa, we are talking about the whole world, honestly, at least in the part of the world where you can get the internet and mobile internet. That's why I'm talking about the part, and I would say it's a minority, the bad, what we see, but we have to be careful that it's not going to the maturity.
Okay, thank you. So you said no.
Because there are bad things in social media, and they get more attention than good things, because social media, the big tech can make more money with the bad things. People are more interested in, you know, all these crazy things, and so this is not reality what you see over there. It's a part of reality, and you have to be very careful what you see. Is it true or is it not?
Completely. And so I don't think that what we're seeing online every day is a true reflection of our society, but I do agree that there's spaces that people have found kinship with others, even if how they organize is based on organizing around hating somebody else. We're finding community online, and some of that community can be about knitting or cooking or sewing or activism. Sometimes that community can be about how do we organize to get rid of immigrants? How do we organize amongst young men so that we can be violent towards women? And so what the space has done is that it's created space for community. How people are using that is where a lot of the danger comes in. So let's talk about free speech versus hate speech. And I'm sorry that, there's an issue with the projector, so it's not, that part has been cut out. But our Constitution protects freedom of expression. It is a constitutional right. And that means that everybody has the right to speak, to share their opinions, and to express themselves, even if others disagree. So you could have an opinion about Donald Trump. You could be a MAGA fan, and you would be allowed to express that opinion. And that's fine. That is your right to do so, because that is you exercising your political speech. But when speech crosses, so it's a right with limitations. It's not an absolute right, which means that when it crosses the line into harming, that's when the law steps in. So freedom of expression doesn't protect incitement to violence or advocacy of hatred based on race, ethnicity, gender, religion that amounts to any type of incitement to cause harm, right? So you can criticize the government, you can criticize me, I may sue you for defamation, but you can level your critiques, and that is protected speech. But you can't use your speech to promote hate, to dehumanize a call for harm against other people. Now, hate speech, do we know why we needed hate speech laws in this country? I'm talking to the young people. Does anyone want to tell me why hate speech laws were important for us? That we saw that freedom of expression, political speech is an important right, but there's a limitation to that right. Anybody want to give it a try? Amir, I'm going to come back to you.
Okay. Short answer, apartheid.
Okay, yes. Nicole, do you want to give a longer answer? So the worst thing is if I know your name, I'm definitely going to pick on you, so.
Yeah, I think it is a function of our particular history. Hate speech is not particular to South Africa. There are many countries and jurisdictions around the world which also prohibit hate speech. A number of European countries do, and in a sense that is a response to their history. So Germany has particular laws prohibiting speech which denies the Holocaust. And I think it is in response to our history, especially of racial discrimination and hatred, and the inequality that produced. But not only racial discrimination and hatred and the inequality that produced, but also gender discrimination and hatred. And in fact, analogous, I mean, our hate speech prohibits speech which seeks to cause harm, perpetrate harm, or perpetrate and promote hatred against persons who might be identified on the basis of their sexual orientation or their ethnic or social origin, recognizing that the harms that they might feel are similar to the hatred and discrimination that was perpetrated under apartheid and that was done chiefly along racial lines. And it does, our constitution, we had an interim constitution and then a final constitution. They were part of the same process. And they were very much conceptualized, both forward-looking to try and secure the future we needed in South Africa. But that future was very much conditioned by our past and the redress that we had to make for the past that we had suffered. And that is the justification for hate speech and why it is seen as a justifiable limitation on freedom of expression.
Great, thanks, Nicole. So, not everything that you see online, not everything that you see that's negative online is hate speech. So there's a clear parameter and definition of what hate speech actually is. And in this next slide, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out whether it's free speech or hate speech. But Nicole, who is the director of the Campaign for Free Expression, is going to be the final arbiter. She's going to rule whether free speech or hate speech. So if it's free speech, it's green. If it's hate speech, red. Yeah? So let's go. The wording is a bit dark, so I will read it out for you. So this says, our government must do better. Corruption and looting have stolen opportunities from from young people. We deserve leaders who serve, not eat. Free speech, hate speech. Let's see everybody's paddles. Where are we? What do you think? Free speech or hate speech? Okay, Nicole? Free speech, there we go. Because you can criticize the government. That is part of your protected political speech. The next one. Filthy foreigners are taking all the jobs. South Africans are left hungry while they thrive. Time to take our country back. Free speech or hate speech? Okay, let's see. I want to see the paddles. Okay. William, what are you saying? Free speech. Okay, everybody else is saying, most people are saying hate. You're saying free speech. Can I ask why?
Sure. I mean, I do totally disagree with this statement, right? And this is like, I'm a journalist from Germany, so maybe that's my very German opinion. But I would actually, as a journalist, fight for people that they would be allowed to have this opinion, even if I highly disagree, and I do think it's a disgusting opinion to have. But I think people should be free to say this. I think the thing that we actually should are considering are the consequences of these kinds of messages, right? So that's on the other side.
Okay, I'm going to come to you in a second at the back. And again, just because it's free speech doesn't mean it's not harmful or in itself hateful, but there's clear legal definitions and parameters around hate speech. But I want to come to the back. You have a very strong opinion that you want to tell me.
I'd get why it can be considered to be hate speech, and the reason why it could be considered hate speech is because of the first word that was used, filthy. But then it can be free speech if you move the word filthy. This can be someone's opinion and they have the right to express it, right? It's freedom of speech. So with freedom of speech comes responsibilities. The person that said this did not use their responsibilities, but used an insult to describe a particular group of people, and now it sounds xenophobic.
Okay. Should we, anybody else wants to weigh in before Nicole decides for us? Do you want to go?
Hi. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't think this is hate speech. It might be hurtful, but I don't think it's harmful or hateful or incites violence, and that's actually the definition for hate speech. It might fit into other forms of prohibited speech. It could possibly fit into harassment in terms of perputa, but it's not hate speech.
Thank you. Nicole, what's your verdict? Hate speech. Tell us why.
the prohibited grounds of hate speech don't include nationality. Explicitly, they speak about ethnic and social origin, which, conceivably foreigners fall within that. But the definition then goes on to say that any analogous groups where the speech is such that it could perpetrate systematic disadvantage or secure harm or incite harm in a way that would be analogous to the prohibited grounds would fall within the definition of hate speech. And so that use, I think, as the previous speaker said, the use of the term filthy to describe foreigners, I think does take it into the category of hate speech. It's a degradation, a systematic degradation of foreigners as a category and looks to perpetrate harm against them as a category.
Okay, there we go. See, it is tricky. It is tricky. You disagree, but you and Nicole will fight it out later. Not physically. The next one. We can't fight gender-based violence unless all men start taking accountability and calling out their friends. This isn't a women's issue. It's a national crisis. All men. Free speech, hate speech. Again, I want to see paddles. I want to see opinions. You have to have an opinion on this. And if you don't know, you can go down the middle. Okay, most people are saying free speech. Yeah. Nicole? Free. Okay, fairly easy one. The next one. Black people will always be lazy and corrupt. That's why this country is falling apart.
Free speech, hate speech.
My brother, you were saying it's free speech. Yeah, you had the green up.
It's offensive, but it's free speech. It's not like the other speakers said. It's not exactly inciting violence or pushing people to cause harm. So, you can have an opinion, even if it's a bad opinion.
Even if it's a
but
racist
you're
opinion.
allowed to have that bad opinion. So for me, it's not hateful speech or harmful speech. It's just bad speech.
Okay, who thinks that this is hate speech? Who wants to say, here we go.
Yeah, I think it's hate speech because, I think because of our country's history, when you say black people are always be lazy and the reason why the country's falling apart, to me, comes across as hate speech. And racist, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody want to share? Amir?
Yeah, no, it's definitely hate speech because I think it incites hatred. And I mean, it's very similar for me and the previous, not the previous, the one before that around filthy foreigners. I mean, other than using, I think, provocative language that can make people feel a certain way, and people who might agree with that kind of opinion even kind of like brew further hatred, there is a strong disinformation element to it as well. And I wonder how that falls under hate speech, as a matter of fact, because filthy foreigners are thriving, factually inaccurate, black people being corrupt, as if colonialism wasn't, inaccurate, yes. So hate speech straight up for me.
Thank you. Nicole, can I give you a verdict?
Yeah, it's hate speech. And I just wanted to make the point. Hate speech is not only about inciting harm, right? It is speech which is harmful in itself, or speech that may incite harm, incites harm, or promotes or propagates hatred against the group that is being targeted in that speech. And it is speech that is directed at a prohibited, on the basis of prohibited ground or analogous. And I would just say it's not necessarily about sort of inciting violence, physical violence towards that group. It's about diminishing their value and their standing in the public's eyes, right? And so much of the kind of historical hatred that we as a country are trying to redress is about this dehumanization, the diminishment of the value of certain people based on certain immutable features, their race, their gender, their class, their sexual orientation. And I think I mean, we can discuss whether hate speech is the correct way to go about trying to address these harms, but certainly that is what hate speech is attempting to do.
Completely. Okay, so thanks Nicole, thanks for being our arbiter. I just want to get a sense, you can use your paddles, especially for young people in the room. Do you feel like you have a better understanding of what hate speech is versus free speech? No? You still don't understand? Okay, we're going to have to do round 2 of this. Do you have a comment?
I think my comment on some of these speeches is, so maybe it just would help to give my background. I work for the South African Human Rights Commission. I'm the advisor to the commissioner who oversees equality, and we receive a lot of complaints around hate speech and racism, etc. And what we see is that actually hate speech, according to the definition in Popular, is actually quite narrow. So a lot of the stuff that I said I disagreed wasn't hate speech. It's offensive, and in most of those instances, I don't think we would have been able to prosecute that or to go after the respondent for hate speech. But there are other forms of prohibited speech, which I mentioned earlier, like harassment, which are broader. Their definitions are broader, but I think maybe we don't realize actually how limited hate speech is, particularly after the Constitutional Court's decision in Gwelane, which really narrowed the definition of hate speech. It used to include hurtful speech, but that's been removed, and that's actually in line with international standards. International jurisdictions around the world don't recognize hurtful speech, the use of words like filthy, when referring to foreign nationals as hateful. It'll generally potentially fall in another category, thankfully, that we have, which is harassment, and we've seen that now in a case that we have against a particular public figure. Yeah, I won't go further than that.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to give a response to Nicole, and then we're going to move on to the next, and then I'll come back to you in the next round at the back.
I would just say, I think it is clear, and post-Pelani, our law is certain that it's not hurtful speech that, on the prohibited grounds, that is prescribed. It's harmful speech, or speech that incites harm or promotes or propagates hatred. But I do think that our courts are constantly evolving in their jurisprudence. So we have had a very recent definition, even post-Kwelani, in respect of Kenny Kenene and the use of the term cockroach, right, held to be hate speech. And again, I mean, obviously in the context of Rwanda, term cockroach brings to mind all sorts of harm. The idea, though, that it was used against Julius Malema in the context of a political debate explains because of this cockroach. I would disagree. It was just not clear. It was clearly, in my mind, not hate speech, and yet we had the courts find that. So I think all to say, it's not. This was a really good, thought-provoking exercise. But I think we do need to recognize that the courts are actually in the process of trying to better wrestle with what we mean by hate speech. And again, I think what it comes back to is prescribing speech the way in which we want to redress the harms of the past, because then we are always going to be having arguments about the definition.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to the both of you. And I think this is sort of part of what I was trying to raise through this exercise, is that sometimes it's not just as clear that this is hate speech versus this is free speech. We saw when our president went to the States and went to Washington, and Trump did the whole presentation about the EFF and Kill the Boer, and our courts have ruled that that is political speech. It's not hate speech. But we have big segments of our population who would disagree. They would say that that song in itself is hateful because it incites violence. And so it is an emerging area, and I think with social media, and because there's so much of hate and harm that we're seeing online, chances are there's going to be more of these cases that emerge, and the Human Rights Commission and Equality Court are going to start to have to grapple with this a bit more deeply. If you allow something like being called filthy or cockroach just go without being challenged? What is the type of environment that we can create? But on the other hand, we don't want to control and police people's speech either. People have the right, a constitutional right, to express themselves. So it's a tricky area, but I'm hoping that what we are going to do by the time we get to the end of this session is, one, understand the nuance between freedom of expression and hate speech, but two, also understand how our algorithms in social media, in particular, promote a lot of harmful, hateful content. So let's go to how the algorithm loves hate. And I just want to show you a few tweets side by side, and I want you to tell me. So if you think that post A will go viral, you'll show me your green side. If you think it's post B, you'll show me your red side. So post A says load shedding suspended for 3 weeks. Eskom says progress made on maintenance. And post B says we all know load shedding will be back next week. Don't fall for the PR nonsense. Which one is going to go viral? A or B? B. Most people are saying B, okay? Yeah. Next one, men's health matters. It's okay to ask for help. Post B, modern men are weak. Our grandfathers would be ashamed. Which would go viral? Okay, most people, based on their social media, is saying B, right? Let's go. A, we need open conversations about privilege and inequality. B, white people caused all of our problems, they must shut up and listen. Which is going viral? A or B? B, okay? And then, I think this is the last one, change starts small, let's build the South Africa we deserve. Or B, nothing will ever change here, this country is finished. Which is going viral? B. This is really depressing. Last one, study shows youth unemployment drops slightly in 2025. Government and NGOs collaborate on skills programs. Or B, youth unemployment crisis, the government is failing us again. Hashtag do better. Hashtag Mzansi downfall, which is going viral, A or B? Okay, so I want us to have a bit of a reflection. What did you notice about the kinds of posts that win? And how does this affect what we believe about our country and each other? Thoughts? I'm going to start at the back.
Thank you. Where it bleeds, it leads. South Africa loves violence. Well, is that hate speech or freedom?
No. That's not.
Oh,
You're protected.
Thank you. Yes, because of everything that is sensationalized is the one that goes viral. But when you are making sense, you won't get the traffic that you want. But when you start violence, you get the traffic.
Okay, just pass to the back.
I think the post showed us that we are a shock value nation. We want to be shocked. We want the negative speaks to our emotions. It urges us into action more than thinking of it in solution-based mindset. So we kind of want to know that we have a problem, but we don't want to think about, because the other headlines, they were giving a solution in each and every one of the headlines to say, this is how we could improve the very same situation, because essentially you were saying it, the very same statement, just one in a negative way, shock, rage bait, and the other one was solution based. So I think we as a nation are affected by the violence in our country. I think the remnants of our past, the society we're living in that is highly unequal, drives us to operate from that version of being. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Just hold. I'm going to come back to this side. I just want to take any comments here.
I had a friend a couple of weeks ago say, I'm very easy to rage bait because I'm already angry. And I think that's what it is. Like, some of those posts were more venting, we already know we're going to get load shedding again because we got it 2 weeks ago and we got it 3 weeks ago and 3 months ago. And so it's things like that where it's not always inciting violence or it's not violent, but it's just we are tired, we're angry already because there's so much going wrong that when things go right, or when things, like our colleague said, when things make sense, it doesn't make sense. Why is it making sense? Who is responsible for it? And when is the other shoe going to drop?
Yeah.
And so when we see things like, oh, NGOs and government are collaborating, oh, so that means somewhere, somehow, someone is going to eat soon, you know? And so we're like, we're not gonna give that attention because crisis is here, unemployment is here, we're complaining. And it also is going viral because people are also responding to say, you know, my uncle, you know, has been unemployed for 40 years, or my uncle has been, you know, he lives in an area that hasn't had electricity in so long. And so it's going viral, also because people are, you know, it gets the people going, but it's also because it's a space where people are venting and expressing their disappointment in whatever it is that's happening, or even their anger in what it is that's happening.
Yeah.
So I think
Okay, thank you. Did you want to say something? Or you can come over here.
I think I have two issues with this kind of assessment that we're right now doing. I think one is that we kind of minimize the actor himself or herself, right? Like, we as people within social media, I mean, I don't know how you guys use social media, but I actively followed pages, I actively followed content creators, I actively followed journalists, right? So this is on the one side that we see content of them. I've done a lot of research into TikTok and algorithms. TikTok only uses, I think it's 30% of exploration content that they show you, so most of the time they show you stuff that you actually do engage with. So I think with these questionnaires of like, or this quiz of like, what do you think is gonna go viral? When I saw the post, I could totally imagine that the positive messages could also go viral, viral being defined by getting a lot of engagement, because people actually are also in good spaces and they are interested in good news, or they want to read like nuanced messages, right? And people do engage with this as well. So I think this kind of assessment, I mean, we're not just consumers on these platforms, right? We are actual citizens that do actively take part and engage with it. And it is maybe not to 100%, but at least to 50%, our decision what actually goes viral, right? So it's not that black and white and polarized as it's now assessed, and I think I have an issue with this.
Yeah. On that though, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a fair game, because where you have anonymous paid influencers who make a lot of bad content because they're paid by bad actors go viral, are we playing in a 50-50 game? You know, those of us who work in the NGO world or in the media world would know that a journalist could put out a story here. Chances are an influencer who has zero expertise about any of these issues would put out a 2 or 3 part thread tweet, and their content would go viral over what that journalist posted. And that journalist has spent a lot of time, expertise, and resources investigating the story. And so perhaps 10 years ago, I would believe you and say, yes, completely. We can be the architects of this digital space that we're in. But I don't want us to lose agency either, because I do think it is possible for us to reshape our digital worlds. I think we do have to deal with actors and the sort of system, and we're going to go into the systems, that are not fair systems and that are part of narrative manipulation, and that basically keep us enraged because they need our eyeballs. And our eyeballs on screens means they can sell us more adverts, you know, and get more money from advertisers.
Like, I 100% agree with you. I'm so sorry that I'm coming back to this. But I think it would have been better to like actually talk about these, the roots and the causes. And if we would have had 2 tweets or 2 messages that would have even been constructed in the similar way, like good news to go viral, right? Because this actually works. Like if you're a journalist and you participate on these platforms and you want your stories to go viral, this works if you use the semantics and the system that's behind it. If you use this, your work can go viral and goes viral. It does, right? We see this with journalists. So I think this would have been a better assessment than just like put to plain statements. And we have the bias, of course I do have it as well, that the more harmful posts are going to go viral and create more engagement, right?
I'm going to allow just like 2 more reflections, and then I have to wrap up. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Tabo from Imbizo Magazine.
Tabo, you should have told me your name. Now I'm going to pick on you.
No.
Hi, Tabo.
It's just a curiosity when it comes to the back end of social media, because it's been controlled by a person. So don't you think that they're controlling what needs to be viral before you can say people will engage on the content? Mm-hmm. Because remember, people have their own agenda and their own vision to achieve once they build something. So that's the question, because I'm asking this question. I use WordPress. So I do get messages, spam messages from different guys engaging on the articles. So if I can tweak those messages so that they don't really become spam, or I can edit from the back end, what more like Facebook, Twitter, they can't really manipulate to achieve their own agenda.
So, Tawo, very good question. It's controlled by algorithms and content moderation systems, but I'm going to talk to that in a second, and we're going to go into a bit more detail. Just last one. Yeah.
What did you notice about the kind of posts that win? So the people that push negativity or these narratives are the content creators and the influencers, and that's because they have a big following. Unlike journalists who actually went and got a formal education and are on the internet, they don't have many followers because that's not what they're there for. They're not there for a big following. They're there to genuinely put out accurate information. And if an ethnographer were to come to our country, they'd realize one thing about us that we have in common: black, white, Indian, colored, all of us, short, tall, dark. What we share in common is perspective. We feed into what can I say? We feed into negativity and what causes trouble because of our perspective, and I think it stems from our history, and we haven't had a break because after apartheid, it was a democratic country, economy collapsing, youth being unemployed and all of that. So yeah, it stems from our history and what's currently happening. I think the only thing we celebrate wholeheartedly is like the Springboks, but everything else, we feed into it, we entertain what, looks negative, and also we follow the wrong people. We don't follow journalists, we follow content creators and influencers, and that's why these kind of posts get a lot of attention.
So there's also, I think, a psychology around it. MIT had done a study a few years ago that said that lies and harmful content was 70% more likely to go viral than the truth, right? And so there's perhaps a human psychology around, who remembers the Daily Sun? You don't remember the Daily Sun newspaper? We know it, yeah, okay. Yeah, so the Daily Sun newspaper, tabloid, stories about Tokoloshis and you name it, it was on the front page of the Daily Sun. It was one of our biggest papers in circulation because of the way that it framed stories around, it was sensationalist, it was a bit gossipy. In the community that I grew up, there was a community newspaper called the Lenasia Times, and there was a section in it called the Panchat, and Panchat means to gossip. And it was my favorite part of the newspaper because it was about how Mr. XXX loved Mrs. YYY, and they were having this affair, and people would read this newspaper religiously because they loved the gossip sections. So there's something about the way that we are wired, the types of information that we like. Obviously, there's the serious things and the more serious pieces that we'll go after. But you also sometimes want, reality TV, Real Housewives type of nonsense. And so I think that also creates this economy and this attention economy. And what the influencers have mastered, and I want to say is that, I think influencers and content creators are tapping into a digital market. It's an emerging market, especially in South Africa, where there's a lot of young people that are shut out of formal economies. It's creating space for them to earn incomes. But I also think that, the incentive behind it is the more likes and followers and engagement that I get on a post, the more income I'm able to earn and endorsement I'm able to sell. So it's okay if I'm posting something that is lies, that is not truthful, that is hurtful, because I want people to come to my page. That is the incentive. And until we change those incentives, I don't think we're going to be able to change how influencers and content creators are developing. And so there's a loop that happens, at least in our mind, is that we know that outrageous posts get a lot of attention. If you open your social media, especially Twitter, it's such a hell site. But if you open Twitter, you're going to see something that's going to really piss you off, right? And so the outrage post appears, people start engaging with it because they're angry or irritated, or they retweeting because they support and they endorse. The algorithm detects that this is a popular post, so it starts to prioritize it on the top of your feed. More people start to see it, more people start to engage with it, and ultimately, platforms win because they need us on their platforms, they need our eyes there, they need our attention and our engagement, because their business, for us it's free. We don't pay to be on Facebook, we don't pay to be on Instagram or TikTok. And when I say pay, we don't pay a subscription. But essentially, we're the products. They're selling us off to advertisers. They'll say at this time of day, we have so many thousands or millions of people who are engaging online, so we're going to put your content on the top of the feed. We're going to put your advert on the top of the feed. And this is how they're able to generate billions in dollar revenue through a system that does reward outrage. Because if it was just about truth and rainbows and butterflies and normal cat videos, would you really be on social media as long as you are? I don't know. I'm not sure. So there is a system that rewards hate and outrage. And this is how it does go viral. So it triggers strong emotion. And we know that from the MIT studies and more emerging studies that anger and hate spread faster than facts. It earns engagements. So comments can earn algorithmic engagement and boost posts to the top of your feed. It confirms biases, so it can create echo chambers that reinforce identity. And to my colleague who's now left, I think part of what's emerging in the comment there is that we do operate in echo chambers. My social media looks very different to what your social media looks like. And even if I go and like various posts by journalists and various posts by whoever else, even though I blocked Elon Musk from my feed, I'm still getting Elon's tweets because they own the platforms, So there are these echo chambers that reinforce identity and that also then starts to reinforce hate. If you're an unemployed person and you can't get a job, and somebody is feeding you information, some influencer is telling you about how foreign nationals are the reason why you can't get a job because they're taking all of the jobs, and that's all you're seeing on your feed every single day, obviously that influences you. It makes you sort of understand and shapes your views of the world and your place within that world. We spoke about how profitable it is. We also spoke about how it does give belonging. Hate offers false community for people. So the sort of premise is we're going to organize to demonize somebody else. And, we're seeing this in very far-right groups. We're seeing this it's sort of happening in spaces that you'd also not expect it, like gaming sites that children are on. These are where people are starting to organize and, against various issues around hyper-nationalism, around issues to do with masculinity and being an alpha male. So it does give you the space of belonging, but also it's quite invisible. And like I said, my social media looks very different to yours. I actually don't know what you're consuming. And I don't know how you're being manipulated and vice versa. You don't know what I'm seeing and how I'm being manipulated. And so when we do want to do big tech accountability cases, it's really hard because none of our social media feeds look the same. I can say that I was influenced by some radical somebody, right? and therefore this is dangerous. And a court can say, well, but you're one person. Who's to say that a billion other people who are using the social media site is experiencing the same thing? So when we are engaging with content, I think it's always important to ask these key questions. Is who created this content? What emotions does it trigger? Who benefits if this goes viral? And who might be harmed? Being on social media these days, we can't just be passive in how we consume information, because we see how dangerous this is. We also see how dangerous disinformation can be. And so it's very easy to like and engage and share and be outraged and put all of the emojis, because that's your sort of first response. But I think in order to tip the scales a bit, to sort of reclaim space in online worlds, we have to become much more responsible digital citizens. And so this is our recommendation, is that before you rage retweet and just really lose your mind over something, and it's hard because I feel like every day I'm having to stop myself from raging against the machine. But you have to ask yourself about this, is where is this content coming from? Is this person wanting to share truth? Or is this just for about boosting their engagement? If that does go viral, is it because truth wins? Or is it because somebody's going to get a bit of an economic boost because their post went viral? And who are the people that's going to be harmed by clicking and engaging on that? And so I'm ending off here. This is a very quick workshop. I wish we had a few hours. But it is important that we collectively build a safer digital future, because all of us are going to depend on this. We can't sort of carve out spaces of the internet and say, this is mine, and this space is a safe space, because we know that the internet and social media is all borderless. And we know that information moves from one platform to another very quickly. So each one of us have a responsibility to understand the platforms that we use, to understand how algorithms work, to make sure that we are responsible in how we post, in the content that we engage with who we boost online, and also to become better at detecting mis and disinformation. This is our lowest hanging fruit, digital literacy, media literacy, in a broader ecosystem of accountability that we need, because we do need the policies and the regulations, and we need big tech companies to be held accountable for creating spaces online that aren't actually safe. So I'm going to leave it for one last round of comments. If anybody has anything burning that they want to say, let's go with you, Kat.
Thank you. My name is Kat White. I'm a journalist, and I train journalists in TikTok. And I found recently, I've had a look that the #1 most known journalist on TikTok who's disseminating information is a South African guy who lives in London now. And he doesn't have a formal education in journalism. And neither does do other platforms in South Africa. I've been reaching out to these accounts and saying, let's connect, let's chat. I want to understand why did you start making videos? How does this work? And kids are watching these videos, and kids are believing everything that they're watching. So how do we make social media a safer space? I think that's an extremely challenging question. I work with creating content, and it is about that hook. As much as journalists, we're trying to make sure that the facts get out, we also know what we're competing with. And we know that the first 0.3 seconds, that's your hook. And then we also know that it's your call to action. There are so many steps, and these are things that I love, but I know that it's also, it's kind of counterintuitive and very challenging for us as journalists, I find. Thank you.
Sorry, Pat, I heard what you said, and I agree with you. As a small story, I trained as a journalist, and I remember being in like my 3rd year, and Marikana happens, and the entire, before, there was a time in our lives, I don't know if the youngins would understand this, but there was a time in our lives where you had to tune into the news at a particular hour to understand what was happening. You didn't have 24-hour news cycles. And so Marikana happens, and I'm sitting in my lecture, and I'm seeing everything happen live on Twitter. I didn't have to go and sit at a TV, in front of a TV or listen to the radio. And I thought, this is going to change journalism. This is going to change the media. This is fantastic. We're going to get more people, more people are going to have a platform. There's going to be access to information. And yeah, 15 years later, I'm thinking, well, maybe, we should have had more foresight and thoughts about how we create spaces and still preserve journalism, because anybody these days feels that they can be a journalist and even better. And that we know that, all of the perception surveys that are coming up show that there's such a distrust in journalism and journalists. People don't believe in the media as an institution. So they'll rather get their news from a podcaster who happens to be a conspiracy theorist.
Hi, my name is Abena. So I'm going to refer back to the difference between freedom of speech and it just being hate speech. And I know for sure that right now I can't differentiate between the two just yet. So my question is, would you say that it also depends on the consumer themselves and how they absorb the information? Like, for example, that comment where it says, black people are lazy and whatnot, I really didn't find it offending or as a hate speech. So does it also go back to you as a consumer and how you absorb
How
the
you've
information?
interpreted that.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Nicole answer that as a last. Can we go over here? Oh, Nicole, you answered right can you just answer at the end? Let's just go here first.
Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Neo, I'm an attorney. I just had two sort of comments or just thoughts based off of what we discussed earlier. First, regarding the bias issue, I think another thing that we have to bear in mind is that negative content will prevail in South Africa primarily because everyone is sort of exposed or has a generally negative life experience. More people are disadvantaged than they are advantaged. Therefore, they would look for the content that speaks to the experience. And I think of a platform like LinkedIn where it pays to be positive. Everything that goes viral there is very happy. You're sort of shunned upon to actually post something negative there. And then leading on from that, okay, the thoughts now escape my head. But yeah, essentially, when you think about the negative aspects on platforms like Twitter, you sort of see, okay, no, the thoughts left my mind, but thank you.
Absolutely fine.
Hi.
Okay.
Yes.
Go for it.
So I think as media houses and media people, we should confront this reality, which is very sad. People do not defend the truth. They defend who they love. You can see, for example, the likes of Chris Excel.
Oh,
so now when something is happening in South Africa, they're like, Chris, we'd like to hear your thoughts on this. They don't even know him, but they know that when he has information, it goes viral because of how he reports it, without any filter, without any shame at all. So people do not defend the truth anymore. They defend who they love. So now we should continue to come in spaces like these to talk about these issues and see how we can remedy this, because it is really an issue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to come down this way. Okay. Oh, hold on. Okay, Mklatsi is going to decide. Yeah.
Maybe we hear
let's go
voices that we haven't heard.
And then we'll go up here, and then we'll come down to you, sir, and then we'll end up.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Godani. I just wanted to get your insight on. So what I've realized is there is a lot of harmful content, much of which amounts to hate speech, that goes unaccounted for, especially on platforms like Facebook, because of that language is written in vernacular languages, of which even translations on those platforms cannot even efficiently translate to narrate the true meaning of the post. Yeah. So what are your insights on that? How do we deal with that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's such an important question, and something that's really pertinent to the issue of platform accountability. So who knows about what happened in Myanmar? Come, my journalism students, you must know, right? So a few years in Myanmar, it was a few years ago, what happened in Myanmar was there was this big proliferation of technology. So after years of not having access to technology, within like 3 or 4 years, they built up massive ICT infrastructure. Everybody's on Facebook. Facebook comes in, they give you data-free access to their platform, and they start to engage. And what happens is that there is a lot of posts that emerge that is very hateful, inciting violence towards the Rohingya people in Myanmar. And at the time, there was one content moderator for that whole country that understood the language, that tried to flag it with Facebook Global to say, hey, there's a problem here. There's a lot of hate speech that's going on. We need to do something. Facebook ignores this, doesn't do anything. And then we see full-on ethnic violence that happens in Myanmar. Thousands of people are killed, even more are displaced. And that goes to the core of content moderation. It's because these platforms don't want to disclose and tell us how many content moderators they have in our countries, right? And content moderators should be able to know and understand language and nuance and slang and political context. There's one major platform, and I can't mention who, but apparently they have one content moderator for the whole continent of Africa. How many languages do we speak on this continent? Telling me one person, and I mean, I would hate to have that person's job. But a lot of it is also now deferred to AI. They let their algorithms and they let AI determine whether or not this is hate speech, whether or not that's harmful. Are these AI and LLMs trained on our vernacular languages? They don't tell us. We don't know. So another organization that we work closely with called the Legal Resources Center, in the elections last year, they ran a test. So they created these really harmful, hateful adverts in English. They tried to get it to be, they tried to post these on Facebook to advertise. Facebook obviously said, no, this is hateful, it violates our terms. They took it down. They translated the same posts into, I think it was into Zulu, into Sotho, and one other language, and Facebook allowed them to flight that because the system couldn't pick up that it was the exact same text, just in a different language. And so there is a sort of English bias, a Western language bias that you see on these platforms, but also the lack of proper content moderation and outsourcing it to machines to determine whether something is hateful or harmful, I think is part of the big problem of why we're seeing so much of negativity online. Okay, here we go. We've added one more to the list.
Oh, okay. So I think for me, it's also a question of what is the current journalism student actually learning at the moment? Because they have to firstly keep up with technology that doesn't exist. So I remember one thing about what they call now content creation, but was journalism back then. One of the things we were taught in journalism, I don't know if any journalists in the room will remember, the famous picture of the vulture that was, the picture of the vulture that was eating a child with kwashiorkor. So that child was obviously not gonna survive, but the journalist, I think that was one of the ethical things that was put to us as journalists to say, were you supposed to sit there and help the child not be eaten by vultures because they were going to die anyway and the vultures were going to eat them? Or were you supposed to take this picture and actually show the world what is happening in Africa or in that African country? So I think the fact that content creators are actually have this responsibility of having numbers and being able to bring in load shedding.
Just on your side.
They're able to bring in, these mass people to follow them and sensationalize certain topics. They're not being taught the ethical implications. They're not going through journalism 101 to find out what's going on. And the journalists that do know, are they keeping up with the technology? Do they know AI? Do they know how to, in newsrooms that are ever resource, they don't have any resources. Are they reading books? Are they learning? Because I don't think the journalists that we have understand the topics that are happening at the moment. They can't even translate climate issues. They don't understand hydrogen. They don't understand everything, green hydrogen and how it impacts, how we can use it as a source of energy. So if our own journalists are not being given the resource to continue to learn, even the ones that are still at school, I think it's something that is going to continue to keep the content creators feeding into the system. Yeah.
Look, I agree with you. I think that journalists and journalism and media needs more resources. People need to, there was a time when I was studying that you did beat training. You specialize in particular areas. These days, newsrooms are so thin that you can't even have specialized reporting on healthcare or education or climate change because one journalist is covering 10 different areas of work. So we have to find ways to fund journalism in the media again, and I'm hoping that, what emerges from our competition commission in terms of holding these big tech companies accountable is how we can generate money back into media houses. But I also don't want us to take an us versus them approach to content creators. I hear you completely on ethics. This is the work that we do around digital ethics, about each one of us have a responsibility, not just content creators, because we are content creators as well. I might not have a following of like 10,000, but I'm putting out information to my 100 Instagram followers, of which Amir is one of them. and I have to think about what am I putting out, and is this going to be offensive or hurtful or harmful, So each one of us who do have this platform have a responsibility to put out ethical content. So I have to wrap up, and I'm going to be very, very strict. There's just 3 more. Amir, Yusa, and Nicole.
Great.
Okay.
No worries.
Yeah.
I'm happy to sacrifice it.
Just make it
Sure.
very quick comment.
Let's be honest. I just want to share something with everybody who's interested in why emotive messaging has more trendability possibilities than anything else. There's a philosophy by there's a philosophical school, dymathic economies. It is kind of like ancient in its thinking, where it's rooted in Plato's thinking of how economy works. Hegel also obviously proceeds to elaborate a bit further. Dymathic economy is humans' desire or hunger for recognition, emotion, and dignity. In societies where those 3 elements of human nature have been violated, generally, there's a deep hunger for that recognition and dignity. And therefore, big tech has a great understanding of this. And that's why they structure their algorithm in a way that prioritizes emotive messaging, because it provides people with a certain level of, recognition, and what you had on your slides earlier around fake communities. So yeah, just look into it if you're interested. That's why anger can be used as a commodity.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. We're gonna go here.
Okay, hello everyone. So I just wanted to just to put my a little input on this. So on Game of Thrones, there is a saying that says chaos is a ladder.
Yes.
So what is happening now, all these negative images that we're seeing, negative comments, they're kind of making us fight amongst ourselves. And then I saw something that said that we're not even aware that we're being manipulated. And the fact that we're being manipulated and we keep on feeding the negativity every time. These corporates and tech companies, they are benefiting from that. And then at the end of Game of Thrones, they're saying that we have to break the wheel and create new narratives. So I feel like as journalists also, we tend to put ourselves away from the equation, saying that, there is content creation. Tina, we're not doing something like that. We're following facts and all that. But then AI is so, what can I say? It's an advantage for us to make things easier. And what we can do as journalists, we can manipulate AI to work for us. There are apps and other apps that you can use to also manipulate the algorithms. But then it's another story for another day, but we can still
we can talk about that and ethics around that, because there's also some ethical issues there. Anyway, finish your point. So.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that we shouldn't put ourselves away from the program in saying that we're not part of it, we're not content creators, we're not famous, or we're not going to have like viral stories. But then there are things that we can do in order for us also to let our stories be out there. It's not always negative. We can manipulate the system, although it's not like an easy thing.
We don't like to manipulate anybody.
No, I'm just...
Okay. My biggest takeaway from all the inputs is that there's a clear need for media literacy, but I'm getting the sense that we need adult media literacy.
Yeah.
Because there's often targeting at young kids in schools, but also the youth. But just listening to the comments in the room, I'd like your views on how do we get adults like 40 plus to 60 plus, because we see grannies on TikTok, you know, promoting hate speech, etc.
Yeah.
How do we reach,
you
know, how do we reach, you know, that target audience and just give them basic media literacy? Because part of what they're doing online, they're eroding their own dignity as well. Yeah.
So very fun fact about how I started Code. My background in history is actually in anti-corruption. And after sort of Trump won in 2016, I go and I study data science and whatever, and I'm interested about data and information manipulation. But in COVID, my grandparents they weren't getting along, you know, fighting over the TV. And so I thought, okay, solution, you throw money at the problem, buy both of them tablets, you can watch your separate things and you won't irritate one another. And I promise you, within 3 months, my very sweet, lovely, progressive grandparents in their 70s got radicalized by their YouTube algorithm. And it started off by them like watching yoga videos and meditation videos. And all of a sudden, they go down this rabbit hole where they start consuming a lot of this right-wing Indian Hindu nationalist content from the BJP and Modi. And my grandma's her best chummy for years was a Muslim lady, Auntie Miriam. They don't talk to each other anymore because they're on conflicting political views. And so that was part of the motivation for why I started Code, is because you give people devices, access to information, you put them on platforms, but you don't actually teach them how to use this. And now you're being manipulated by an algorithm that you don't understand, that's appealing to your biases, your religious biases, cultural biases, your views, and it's dangerous. You know, very progressive people all of a sudden hold very radicalized views on people. And that's part of the work that we have to do. So our sort of target audience is not just young people. Our target audience is anybody who has access to a smartphone and is online, needs to be able to know how to use that device and how to use it responsibly, and also to understand how they're being manipulated. Okay, last voice, Nicole.
And it was just responding to that question about how is hate speech judged, what is the standard, and it's not a subjective standard. It's not whether the person who feels the target of the alleged hate speech determines that it's hate speech. It is whether a reasonable person would have understood that speech in that particular content, in that particular context, to be harmful or inciting harm or promoting or propagating hatred. But so it is an objective standard, and it's conditioned on the reasonable person. But it is a judge applying that, and the judge is going to construct who that reasonable person is. Given that it is context specific, it does mean that there is certain subjectivity that creeps in. So of course, I mean, there's been some disagreement. Is that comment about filthy foreigners, you know, one which is hate speech? In a context where it is the leader of Operation Dudula standing outside in Jeppe in front of informal traders, addressing a crowd of supporters, right, a adoring crowd of supporters, and saying, look at these filthy foreigners, they're the reason you don't have jobs, that's going to be judged to be very different than in a context where a random anonymized person on Twitter or X is posting it. And again, it just speaks to the variables in this jurisprudence, which makes it difficult. And then one last thing that I wanted to say, because somebody brought up this issue about social media platforms and content moderation, and often not being able to identify what's happening in sort of indigenous languages in South Africa, and of course the inadequacy of the content moderation that we have for this country and for the continent at large. But just to say, I mean, people have spoken about AI and the coming AI, and these issues, unfortunately, are likely to be just supercharged in their we as Africans on the African continent, we certainly want our material and our content to be used in the training of AI models. Otherwise, we're going to have AI models that just kind of reflect back centuries-old bias, right? They're going to inscribe the biases. We're going to have things like Musk-Grok repeating, But we also have to have legal regimes in place that ensure that our content creators get fair remuneration for their content. So it can't be that Zakes Mda only gets kind of redress because his representatives in the US are using the US system to ensure that his books aren't just used for training models, but that content creators in South Africa have no such protection because we actually as a country have failed to put in place the legal frameworks that are going to provide our content creators with that protection. So that's just a promo for tomorrow's session.
Great. Okay. So thank you, everybody. I hope that you found this to be a useful session. We are all on a collective journey together. No one person or organization is going to fix this problem. It's going to require all of us to become better at how we use our social media, to become more ethical about the type of content that we promote, and also to become much more responsible about what we share, what we like, what we engage with, who we sort of give platforms to. We are a non-profit. We don't have money, so please, we need our paddles back. They're part of our training resources and tools, so please give that back to us. And please go and engage with us on social media. Go sort of check our website out. We have a lot of resources, a lot of content that we publish. We host events on the first Thursday of every month, so we'd love to see you there. So go sign up for our newsletter and you'll get alerts about our events. But thank you, everybody. Thanks for being with us, and have a good rest of the day.
Another round of applause for Kavisha. So there are a couple of things that came out of this session, and were very important lesson that I think we all learned. So from this presentation that Kavisha, you could tell that hate speech thrive through emotional appeals, of which is anger, fear, and polarization, exaggerate, invert threat, target specific group, hostility towards particular group, polarization, us versus them. So these are the triggers that I've learned through this lesson, and what can be done going forward. So it's very much critical from what she was talking about, and I learned that it's very much critical to start building a strong digital literacy programs. As someone was saying, someone up there saying that we need to start digital literacy program for adults. I can tell you I've attended some of MMA young people digital programs. Young people are more educated when it comes to digital space than us elders. So some of the things, and then we need to start, supporting fact-checking organizations such as MMA, supporting their work, going into their platform, reporting this hate speech, disinformation, and other online harms that are being posted there as a thing that needs to be reported. One another thing, we need to start, looking at how can we hold accountable the platforms, your Facebook, your Twitter, your TikTok. We need to start building a strong mechanism to hold this platform accountable. And also, always playing safe online. We need to check
pause and think before we start sharing stuff, because most of the things of hate speech, without the next person sharing this hate speech, it's not going to go far, and then we should be able to curtail hate speech from that point. From there, I think we did have a very powerful conversation. I don't think we'll have another powerful session like this one. Thank you for everyone for the engagement. I think it was powerful. I think majority of us got the time to engage, speak, and yeah, so come back to the next session. I think it's starting at 6, and then we do have more things, and then tomorrow, and then also on Thursday as well. Thank you for everyone for the good engagement. See you later in the evening. Thank you.